Folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, and joining us right now is our friend John Fund. Of course, you know him, you love him, and he is a national affairs columnist for National Review, senior editor at the American Spectator. And John, welcome once again.
Pleasure, Steve.
And I just want to alert the folks, tell us a little bit about Lincoln at Gettysburg. You're going to be hosting that documentary, which immediately follows this show at 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 Pacific time on Newsmax TV, newsmaxtv.com. So give us a little insight into what it's all about.
Well, Abraham Lincoln did not just change this country because of the leadership he had for the northern states of the Civil War. He also changed this country because I think he understood as president the healing that the country would have to go through, and also the tremendous effort it would have to make to bind up the nation's wounds, as he put it, and end slavery. And Gettysburg is a far more important incident in American history than the mere 2 minutes it took for him to make his remarks. And we have noted Lincoln scholar Henry Mark Holzer to join us, and I guarantee every one of you in your audience will learn something interesting about Gettysburg they didn't know before.
And I'm sure Barack Obama watches, since he's never been there and wasn't there today. He would have a lot to learn as well.
Well, the president has been distracted lately.
Yeah, so I hear. All right, I want to talk about, John, and we look forward to that tonight right after this show at newsmaxtv.com. I want to talk about a piece you wrote at National Review, very, very important piece and brilliantly done as usual, because once again we have an appointment being, or at least a pick by Barack Obama, and it's being called by J. Christian Adams, former Justice Department whistleblower, as an in-your-face pick, which I think almost 90% of his picks are in-your-face picks because they all reflect who he is, and they're all radical leftists in one way or another. Talk about the man who is now being nominated to run the Justice Department Civil Rights Division.
Well, as you know, the previous director of the Office of Civil Rights, Thomas Perez, is now Secretary of Labor. And Thomas Perez was known for his support of disparate impact laws. These are laws that say, we can't prove or even show that there was discrimination or racism, but we do see that a particular policy has a disparate impact. In other words, it affects Hispanics at a higher percent. If the results aren't the same, there has to be evil intent behind it. And, of course, he also fought against all voter integrity laws, including photo ID laws. Well, his successor, Debe Agabene, is just made out of the same cloth as he is. In fact, he's former head of the NAACP's Legal and Defense Fund. And if you thought Thomas Perez was a radical, we may even go beyond his normal behavior with this new guy.
All right, and how so? Give us some examples.
Well, for example, strict racial quotas. The NAACP Legal and Defense Fund has for years not just supported affirmative action, but strict quotas. Give you an example. New York City Fire Department. There are two kinds of tests at the New York City Fire Department. There's physical tests, and then there's the comprehension, literacy, mental tests, and skill tests. Well, apparently, if there's a disparate impact and more minority test takers fail than white test takers, that means you have to throw the test out and hire enough minority firefighters that you achieve their given percentage of the population in the area in New York City. This is just blatantly unconstitutional. The test has been shown to have a valid business purpose. It's a valid purpose that people have to understand manuals. They have to be able to follow instructions. They have to be able to carry out procedures. And it's perfectly fine to have tests. And just because a test has a disparate impact doesn't mean the test is at fault. It means that you have to have better training.
Yeah, it is crazy. We're talking to John Fund. You got to read his piece at National Review online, the DOJ's Radical Civil Rights Division, and you talk about how so many of the people for the Civil Rights Division head have come from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. How radical it had become, even going so far as to oppose criminal background checks by employers. As you mentioned, racial hiring quotas, and talk about the fact that I believe it even provided representation to Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Well, that's perhaps the most disturbing thing. Mumia was a hoodlum and a Marxist revolutionary who murdered a police officer in 1981. and he has been serving. He's been on death row, and now he's off death row and serving life imprisonment for that crime. And the trial was perfectly conducted. The defense mounted almost nothing to exculpate Mumia. He didn't take the stand in his own defense. His own brother, who was there at the scene of the crime, never testified that his brother was innocent, said he had wanted nothing to do with this scene, so refused to testify on behalf of his brother, even though he would know what happened. And ever since then, though, because Mumia was a former radio journalist in Philadelphia, the liberal media has adopted him as some kind of a mascot in many cases, and there have been Free Mumia protests all over the world. And the NAACP, rather than look at the facts and realize that this is a guilty cop killer, they tried to represent him to get him out of jail.
I got to tell you, and you talk about how the Civil Rights Division, how important it is, because it just doesn't, handle voting rights cases. It goes way beyond that. And this Justice Department and Civil Rights Division under Obama, since he was inaugurated, has just flown in the face of the law and Supreme Court decisions. And I think 9 times. I was speaking to Ted Cruz the other day down in Florida. 9 times the Justice Department has said no to DOJ's challenging or interpretation of various laws. So this is a very serious issue.
Well, our civil rights laws are important. We have them because we don't want discrimination. We don't want racism. We also don't want racialism. We don't want people who have an ideological view of the civil rights laws using them as a weapon or a club against people on very, very flimsy legal grounds that have nothing to do with real discrimination, that have everything to do with a political agenda and imagined discrimination.
Yeah. All right, John, we'll watch you right after the show on the documentary Lincoln at Gettysburg at newsmaxtv.com, and thank you for your time as always, my friend.
A pleasure, and you can read all my articles at nationalreview.com.
You got it, nationalreview.com, and do check this one out. All right, folks, when we come back, we did an interview yesterday with Governor Scott Walker, and the governor, of course, of the state of Wisconsin, and we're going to bring it to you when we return. You're not going to want to miss it. He has a new book out, and he has some interesting things to say about the presidency, his plans, and what he's gone through in that state and how he's persevered. And it's made him a stronger and better governor and man. Steve